Gara's surprise was evident as Kira's attacks began to push him back, if only slightly. The boy's strength had grown exponentially, and his fighting style had evolved into something formidable, an amalgamation of martial discipline and raw warrior ferocity. Kira's blows were swift and powerful, each movement imbued with the energy that now radiated from him in a brilliant glow. As they fought, Kira's excitement grew with each passing second. Instead of tiring, he felt himself becoming more fired up, his movements more fluid, his strikes more powerful. The thrill of the battle, the rush of energy surging through him, fueled his determination. And then he felt it, a shift in his spiritual energy. It became heavier, more mature, a tangible force that seemed to pulse with its own life. Recognizing the change, Kira focused on maximizing his control over this newfound power. He remembered Fang's move, how he had materialized his spiritual energy into sharp edges around his hands. With intense concentration, Kira did the same, but his energy was brighter, heavier, vibrating with a dangerous intensity. The sharp edges formed around his hands, almost too powerful for him to contain. He knew he had to finish the fight quickly. Kira took a deep breath, slowing his perception of time to an even greater degree than before. To him, it felt as if Gara was moving underwater, every motion sluggish and predictable. Despite this, Gara's experience allowed him to anticipate Kira's moves, narrowly dodging an incredibly fast roundhouse kick. But Kira was not deterred. Using the momentum from the kick, he twisted his body mid-air, following through with a backhanded swing. His spiritual energy sharpened to a deadly edge. The strike connected with Gara's chest, the sharp energy cutting through the legendary warrior's flesh, drawing blood for the first time. The sight of the blood, the proof that he had wounded the seemingly invincible Gara, filled Kira with a mix of triumph and exhaustion. But the effort of maintaining such precise control over his overwhelming energy took its toll. Kira lost his balance, collapsing to the ground, panting heavily. As he lay there, expecting another of Gara's relentless attacks, he was instead met with an unexpected sight. Gara was smiling, not a smirk of amusement, nor a condescending grin, but a proud, approving smile. For the first time, the great warrior exhaled deeply and spoke with warmth. "You have surpassed my expectations, Kira." His voice, usually like unyielding stone, carried something softer now, pride. He looked down at the blood on his fingertips, then back at Kira with eyes that burned not with fury, but admiration. "You remind me of myself when I was your age, wild, relentless, unstoppable." Kira's body trembled from exhaustion, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He wanted to respond, but before he could, Gara took a step forward. "I accept you as my heir." As those words left his lips, Gara's form began to dissolve into thick, swirling smoke. It did not fade away but moved with intent, flowing toward Kira. The moment it touched his skin, an overwhelming force surged into him. Kira gasped as a fiery heat spread through his body, his muscles tightening, his bones stretching. Strength unlike anything he had ever known coursed through his veins, as if his very essence was being reforged. Images flashed through his mind, Gara's battles, his struggles, his victories, his wisdom. It was not just power Kira was inheriting. It was knowledge, experience, the very soul of the warrior before him. The weight of it all nearly crushed him. His mind reeled, struggling to hold on to himself as the torrent of memories threatened to drown him. He saw flashes of Gara's past. Colossal battles, ancient warriors, bloodied fists raised in triumph. It was too much, too fast. Kira clutched his head, gritting his teeth as he tried to process it all. But even through the storm of emotions and power surging into him, he heard Gara's voice one last time. "Carry my strength, but carve your own legend." Then, the last remnants of Gara's form vanished, leaving only the echoes of his presence within Kira. Johann, who had been watching the fight from a distance, smiled proudly as he took in the sight before him. The energy radiating from Kira was undeniable, his very presence now exuding a newfound strength. "Wow," Johann said, crossing his arms with a mixture of amusement and pride. "You're almost as tall as me now." Kira, still catching his breath, managed a faint smile, but exhaustion was already creeping in. His body, still adjusting to the transformation, felt impossibly heavy. The sheer weight of Gara's essence, the flood of knowledge and power now residing within him, was too much to bear all at once. His vision blurred. His limbs wavered. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. Kira's body finally gave in. As darkness closed around him, he felt no fear, no panic, only a deep, overwhelming satisfaction. He had survived. He had grown. He had been accepted by one of the greatest warriors of all time. His last conscious thought was that of warmth, not just from his newfound power, but from the knowledge that he was one step closer to becoming the warrior he was meant to be. Then, everything faded, and he fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. His body and mind, overwhelmed by the incredible ordeal, surrendered to rest, now carrying within him the unshakable legacy of Gara. Kira woke to the golden light of midday streaming through the windows, casting long, shifting patterns across the room. Blinking against the brightness, he slowly sat up, rubbing the lingering grogginess from his eyes. His body felt different, lighter yet stronger. The overwhelming fatigue from before had faded, replaced by a deep, humming energy within his core. He glanced around, his senses sharpening as he took in his surroundings. "Dad," he murmured, voice still thick with sleep. "How long was I out?" Johann, who had been standing nearby, turned to him with an amused smile. "You slept like the dead, Kira?" he chuckled, crossing his arms. "Are you sure you're ready to get moving already?" Kira stretched his arms, testing his body. There was a strange unfamiliarity to his own movements, but he pushed the thought aside. "I have to report my last mission to Grandmaster Chun," he said, his focus already shifting. Without waiting for another word, he closed his eyes, concentrated, and in an instant vanished. Kira materialized inside his room, but something felt off. The air was still, the faint scent of parchment and incense lingering from before his departure. Yet the door stood slightly ajar. Stepping out, he was met almost immediately by Grandmaster Qin, flanked by several academy guards. Fong stood at the front of the group, his entire body coiled like a spring ready to snap. His sharp gaze locked onto Kira, and without hesitation, he shifted into a combat stance. "I knew it," Fong said coldly, his voice laced with suspicion. "I suspected you were one of them." The guards exchanged confused glances. "One of who?" one of them asked. Kira froze for a brief moment, then realization struck him. He was taller now, his presence heavier, his entire aura different. Gara's essence had altered him. Before he could explain, Fong's muscles tensed further, his mistrust sharpening into something more dangerous. "Wait, about my appearance. It's because of some training I've been practicing." Kira started, but Grandmaster Qin cut in, his expression unreadable yet filled with scrutiny. "Is that really you, Kira?" Qin's eyes scanned him from head to toe. What kind of training could change someone like this in such a short time? Fong didn't ease up. "Master, be careful," he warned. "He must be one of the abyssal kin." "I'm not one of them," Kira snapped, his frustration flaring. "I saved your life back there, Fong." Qin raised a hand, commanding silence. His tone was calm but firm. "Fong, let's hear him out." He turned to Kira. "Explain yourself. Who are you, really? Where did you come from? How did you change like this? And more importantly, how did you survive fighting Kai, Sarah, and the other two? They were all transformed into demons." Kira hesitated. He could feel the weight of their gazes, the thick suspicion pressing down on him. Finally, he exhaled and answered, "I can't tell you who I am or where I come from. As for my appearance, I've already said, it's part of a training I learned from my father. That's all I can say." Fong scoffed, his disbelief evident. "You're lying. There's no way you could have beaten all four of them. Even I couldn't do that." Kira's eyes met his, unwavering. "If you can't do it, then maybe I'm just stronger than you." A flicker of something dark crossed Fang's face, his jaw tightening. His stance lowered further, his fingers flexing, ready to strike. Qin's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Whoever you are, we can't trust you inside the school. Not under these circumstances. I suggest you surrender yourself to the guards until we sort this out. A tense silence fell over the hall. Kira stared at Qin, then at the guards before shaking his head. I refuse. If you can't trust me, then I'll leave the school. Fang took a step forward, his voice low and threatening. Who said you could leave? Kira didn't flinch. Do you think you can stop me? The room crackled with unspoken challenge. Kira's sharp eyes scanned his surroundings, taking in every shift, every subtle movement. Fang's weight had shifted slightly, his stance lowering just enough to indicate he was preparing to attack. Beyond him, 6 guards were inching into position, their hands creeping toward their weapons. Their expressions were unreadable, but the tension in their postures spoke louder than words. The room had become a battlefield before the first strike had even been thrown. Kira's muscles tensed, his mind racing. He knew Fang was about to strike, and the 6 guards surrounding him were prepared to back Fang up. Fang, knowing the danger Kira posed, wasted no time and began the fight with everything he had. He maximized his control over his spiritual energy, causing his body to glow with a sharp, lethal aura. The energy surged around his hands, forming deadly, razor-edged blades that cut through the air as he moved. The 6 other guards, all level 6 fighters, but unable to control spiritual energy, surrounded Kira, brandishing their weapons to compensate for their lack of spiritual abilities. Kira stood in the center of the encroaching circle, his eyes fixed on Fang. He could feel the power coursing through his veins, the strength of Gara now fully merged with his own. The weight of his new abilities made him feel invincible. The weapons held by the guards seemed like mere toys against his rock-solid muscles, which were now as impenetrable as stone. Fang launched the first attack, his glowing energy-infused hand shooting toward Kira's chest with the intent to pierce through him. But to Kira, everything was moving in slow motion. He had all the time in the world to dodge or counterattack, yet he felt the attack was too weak to warrant any effort. Instead, he stood still, allowing Fang's hand to collide with his chest. The result was catastrophic for Fang. His sharp energy, designed to cut through anything, failed to even scratch Kira's hardened body. Instead, the force of the impact shattered the bones in Fang's hand, sending a shockwave of pain through his arm. Fang screamed in agony as he staggered back, clutching his ruined hand, while Kira hadn't even flinched. Grandmaster Qin narrowed his eyes. His usual composed expression wavered, his lips parting slightly in disbelief. Undeterred, Fang attacked again, this time changing his strategy. He knew Kira's body was nearly invulnerable, so he aimed to overwhelm him with speed and precision. The 6 guards, seeing their leader charge forward, joined the fray, coordinating their assault to assist Fang. Weapons slashed through the air as they all converged on Kira at once. But Kira moved with a grace and speed that defied belief. To him, the world was still moving at a crawl. He effortlessly weaved through the attacks, slipping between the guards and Fang with ease. Their strikes, meant to be deadly, were nothing more than slow, telegraphed movements to Kira's enhanced senses. Deciding it was time to end this farce, Kira casually struck out at Fang, his palm hitting Fang's chest. From Fang's perspective, Kira moved like lightning, impossibly fast, like a shadow slipping between the guards. Fang didn't even see the attack coming. The impact of Kira's palm was overwhelming, like a mountain collapsing onto Fang's chest. The sheer force sent him flying through the air. He crashed through the wall, debris flying everywhere, and landed heavily in the schoolyard. A sudden explosion of dust and rubble filled the schoolyard as Fang's body crashed through the wall, slamming into the ground with a sickening thud. For a moment there was silence. Then chaos erupted. Students screamed, their voices rising in confusion and fear. They hadn't seen the fight, but they had seen Fang, one of the Academy's strongest, get sent flying like a ragdoll. Whispers of disbelief spread like wildfire. Fang lay in the rubble, struggling to breathe, his chest heaving as he fought for air. Pain racked his body, and his limbs felt like lead. Meanwhile, back inside, the 6 guards who had attacked Kira stood paralyzed. Their weapons, once brandished with confidence, now shook in their hands. They had seen it firsthand, the effortless, overwhelming power Kira possessed. Survival instincts kicked in. Without hesitation, the guards turned and fled, abandoning the fight, their bravado shattered beyond repair.